Hey, what's happening, guys? What's going on? YouTube, you guys have tuned into Rules for Rebels. Today's video is going to be a little bit more like a podcast. Don't really have anything in particular I wanted to discuss. This is going to be kind of a rambling video. But it is election day tomorrow. I figured we'd talk a little bit about the election, repercussions from the election. You know, what stocks do we expect to go up or down if Biden is elected versus if Trump is elected? You know, how is crypto going to react to all of this? And then, you know, way back when COVID first started, I used to make a lot of kind of like commentary videos on COVID, kind of, you know, talking about our reaction to it, how it's affecting businesses, you know, all those types of things. And I went pretty heavy making those types of videos for a while, and I eventually kind of stopped just because I was getting so frustrated with how everything is going and what a fucked up year this is. And then also it just kind of seemed to be taking over my channel. And I was like, I don't want every video to turn into a COVID video, like some of these other channels that have turned into like all stimulus update videos or all COVID videos or all whatever else. So I figured we just kind of wrap about some of that stuff today. This election is kind of crazy. You know, I think it's a coin flip. I think it could go either way. Obviously, the media is pushing a narrative that Biden's got this thing in the bag. You know, I've seen numbers thrown out. Trump has a 3% chance of winning. Trump has a 9% chance of winning. Trump has a 14% chance of winning. But overwhelmingly, we're being told that Biden is going to crush Trump. And the fact that not only were the media and the pundits wrong back in 2016, but you know, they're just pushing this narrative so hard that this thing's in the bag for Biden that it almost makes me feel like it's going to go the other way, and they want to like disenfranchise Trump voters or frustrate Trump voters and just have them throw up their arms, and why even bother voting? You know, Biden's got this thing in the bag. I could really see it going either way. I'm not necessarily a huge fan of either candidate. I'm not really a huge fan of our political system as a whole. I would love to see more third parties. Shit, if he had a chance and he was actually on the ballot, I would probably vote for Kanye. I don't know if you guys saw, I know it's kind of a crazy thing to say, I don't know if you guys saw Kanye on Joe Rogan. Like, I think Kanye is kind of an idealist, but he wasn't nearly as crazy as I thought he would be on there. And really, like, again, like a lot of his views and things like that are somewhat idealist, but like he was talking about, you know, wouldn't it make more sense if society and cities were structured in a way that people didn't sit in their cars for an hour to work? Wouldn't it be good if everybody came together and actually tried to solve problems? You know, like, nothing he really said was that kind of crazy. I actually thought he had some pretty good ideas. Obviously, Kanye is not going to be president, nor is he even going to get a significant portion of the vote. I think he's only on the ballot in maybe 11 or 13 states, and I think there's maybe another 16 or 17 states that it's even eligible for you to write him in as a write-in candidate. As far as the election, you know, I had an interesting thought today. You know, when was the last time that, you know, the society is so divided today? When was the last time that you actually had independent voters? You know, when I was tuning into the first debate, I heard one of the talking heads or something like that on TV say, like, is anybody actually going into this thing like, you know, I can't wait to hear the candidates' views on different issues so I can make up my decision, right? Like, nobody who was going to vote for Trump is going to switch over to Biden. Nobody who was going to vote for Biden is going to switch over to Trump. You know, everything is so, we're so segregated, it's the wrong word. We're so divided right now. We're so tribal that, like, everybody has a side. And with these debates, it was like, you know, everybody was tuning in to root for their candidate or to boo the other candidate. But no, you know, I can't imagine anybody tuning in like, you know, I can't wait for tonight's debate so I can kind of, you know, see these guys' stances on the issues and decide who I want. And it kind of got me thinking, like, how many elections back do we have to go to where there was actually a toss-up, to where somebody might actually be undecided between the two candidates? I think this election is really going to be kind of a referendum on kind of two things, right? Like, either first you hate Trump or you don't hate Trump. Doesn't mean you love Trump, but you don't despise him, which a good portion of this country does. Outside of that, in my opinion, the election comes down to two issues. Are you for lockdowns and for being very cautious about COVID? Or do you think COVID, you know, it's a real thing. I don't think very many people out there think COVID is fake. But, has COVID been super overhyped? Has there been a huge overreaction to it? and do we need to open the economy back up and get back to life? And so I think who you vote for in large part is based on that. Like if you want to be very cautious, if you want to stay locked down, if you want to wear masks for the next 4 years, you're going to vote for Biden. If you value the economy, the other side would say if you value the economy over life, but I think more it kind of comes down to, do you think COVID is a problem but not as hyped up as we're making it out to be? Do you think things need to open back up? Do you think what we're doing to the economy is worse than anything the virus is going to do to people? If you believe that, you're going to vote for Trump. Now, I think another issue that this election, probably less so than that issue, I think that's the biggest issue we have going on right now, but I think the other thing is kind of like Trump is kind of a vote against cancel culture and political correctness. And if you're sick and tired of the NBA putting Black Lives Matter messages on the back of jerseys and painting the courts, if you're sick of the NFL playing the Black National Anthem before games, if you're sick of people getting upset over characters on cereal boxes and everybody being super woke and needing to use proper gender pronouns and all this other stuff, you're going to vote for Trump. If you're for a friendlier, more loving society, if you're for PC culture, then you're going to vote for Biden. And when I talk about those types of things, with the NBA, I think the NBA is kind of a joke. They want to be super woke and lecture us all about BLM, all the while that they're like super buddy-buddy with China, who's harvesting organs from Uyghur Muslims and putting them in essentially concentration camps. So I think the NBA is kind of hypocrites when it comes to that. And as far as like the whole NFL and like the Black National Anthem, I have lots of black friends, I have black family members, I have a lot of black people in my life. Not a single one of them had ever heard what the fuck a Black National Anthem was. None of them knew anything about a Black National Anthem. And when I would talk to any black people in my life about that whole Black National Anthem issue, not only did they not know it existed, but they didn't want it played. They were like, I've never fucking heard of this thing. I'm an American. I'd like the real national anthem played. Like, this is the dumbest shit I've ever heard. So I think a large part of this election is going to be kind of a referendum on both coronavirus as well as cancel culture, almost as much so, if not more so, than the actual candidate that you're voting for. Thought it'd be worthwhile to maybe have a little bit of a conversation about COVID. It's amazing to think that this all started, technically I think I remember hearing about coronavirus COVID back in January. I had actually flown down to Florida to look at some homes, and on my flight back I saw maybe one person on the plane and a couple people in the airport wearing masks. And I remember getting back and going to my girlfriend's parents' house where I left my car. I think they drove us to the airport. And I remember seeing something on the news about COVID, but like nobody really knew, COVID wasn't that widely known. It was, it was almost like SARS or something. It was something that's going on in Asia. It's not something that's affected the U.S. In February, we started seeing it kind of come to the U.S., but still wasn't really a big deal. And then it was almost like a light switch flipped. And in March, everything was COVID. That's when we had the toilet paper rush. That's when the stock market started tanking. That's when everything started kind of locking down. I guess it kind of depends on what area of the country you're in. Let me know what your guys' experience was like. Here in Illinois, our Governor Pritzker, who I despise, has really kind of clamped down. Like, everything here was shut down. They've been very strict. Beaches, even in Chicago specifically, besides just Illinois, Chicago shut down beaches all summer long, which is kind of funny. Like, casinos are open, bars are open, but, God forbid you go to the beach, something that's like 1,000 times safer than going to a bar. But, beach was closed all summer. No swimming pools were open all summer. It really kind of ruined summer, which is my favorite time of the year, and which is a very short season here in Chicago. So I definitely experienced the lockdowns and Corona kind of changing your life. But I know some states never really locked down that hard, or just had very very brief lockdowns. So I'd be curious to hear kind of what your guys' experience was with the COVID lockdowns and things like that. From the very start of COVID, I was kind of very outspoken against it, or I felt that we were kind of overreacting. This whole thing was a huge overreaction. We arbitrarily decided to shut down our economy, which I thought was a huge decision. It was kind of funny, as I was making those videos, in the back of my head, I was kind of thinking, people oftentimes joke with posts on the internet, like, oh, that didn't age well. And I kind of thought to myself as I was making those videos, like, man, if this COVID thing winds up having like a 10% death rate and wiping out like a tenth of the country, like, I'm really going to have egg on my face. Although I think it's safe to say that I think we probably have, to some extent, overreacted to this. I think a lot of this has been hype, and it's not even necessarily that it's so much corona hype. I feel like the media as a whole is really nothing but clickbait and hype with really any story, right? There was one time when bloggers and social media and Facebook was a lot of clickbait and hype, and the media was still somewhat serious. But I think the media, traditional media is kind of going out of business. They're kind of losing their monopoly on information, and I feel like they've kind of turned to clickbait, and everything has to be super hype-ish and super clickbait. And even if this is kind of a weird, different example than COVID, but if somebody is shot by the police, even if it was a maniac running through the streets with a machete trying to chop people up, the article will say police gunned down 27-year-old man in Oakland, as opposed to saying, like, police stop maniac with a machete charging through the city. Why? Because, when you see police gun down, that's clickbait. That's going to grab people's attention. That's going to get people riled up. That's going to stir up people's emotions, as opposed to just being a news story. So, I think the media as a whole hypes everything. So, it's bound to be that they're going to hype COVID as well. When Elon Musk was on Joe Rogan, he kind of said something to the effect of, he said, I think Joe Rogan had asked him, do you think it was ever at all justified to shut everything down? And Elon Musk was like, look, the first 2 or 3 weeks when this was like really crazy and none of us had an idea what we were dealing with, like, yeah, maybe it was justified in shutting things down for that long. But we quickly saw that we were all kind of being manipulated, that the thing was way overhyped. It wasn't nearly as bad as it was sold to us as being. And this stuff's kind of unnecessary. And just kind of another commentary on that, a lot of people seem to be like, oh, if we had just locked down strictly for 3 months at the beginning of this, we wouldn't have this going on now. I mean, short of New Zealand, which is a tiny island nation, which can't really be used as a comparison to very many countries, even countries that had stricter lockdowns are now experiencing surges. So I think we've seen that you can lock down, you can wear a mask, but you're not going to stop the coronavirus. And the idea that if we all just shuttered in our houses for 3 months, coronavirus would just go away, it's just not the case. And then another thing, people seem, I don't know if people seem to think that, like, food just shows up at your door, and electricity and clean water show up at your house, and your wastewater just automatically goes away, and your garbage just automatically goes away. But, all those things require people out there working to make those things happen. And it's not possible to have 100% of the population just lock themselves in their homes for 6 weeks, 2 months, 3 months, whatever time frame you want to talk about. I feel like with this whole COVID thing, we've kind of seen that this is much less about safety and much more about, if you have a lot of lobbyists in your industry, or if you are friends with the right people, your business is considered safe. And if you're not, your business is considered unsafe. I know here in Chicago, very early on, they made liquor stores across Chicago start shutting down at 9 o'clock, and the excuse given was on the south and west sides of the city, which is kind of the hood for the most part. People were gathering and hanging out outside of liquor stores, and they wanted to tamp down on that, especially since bars were closed at that time, so they made liquor stores shut down at 9. To this day, months and months and months later, liquor stores still have to shut down at 9, but bars at one point were able to be open until like 2 a.m. Who has a strong lobby and strong influence in Chicago? Well, the bar and restaurant lobby. And if we go way, way back to the very beginning of COVID, they pushed locking down back like 3 or 4 days in order to allow St. Patrick's Day to happen. So, we had this terrible virus that was going to kill us all, and there were going to be bodies in the streets. But let's stay open 3 more days so we can get so the bars can make their St. Patrick's Day money, and so we, the city, can collect taxes. Chicago and really the entire state of Illinois is broke and super fucked. Lori Lightfoot, who when she was being elected said she was going to do away with like fees and fines because they were regressive and hurt the poorest people in Chicago, is now proposing that we have cameras up on streetlights, giving people tickets for going as little as 6 miles an hour over the speed limit. It wouldn't be the first time that we had speed light tickets in Chicago, but it's normally over 10, 11, maybe even 13 miles an hour. I'm getting a little bit off topic, kind of focusing on Chicago here, but yeah, that's what's kind of going on here. Let's get a little bit back to the election. A lot of people are wanting to know, like, what stocks are going to do well under Trump, what stocks are going to do well under Biden. The stock market as a whole tends to kind of favor Republicans or conservatives. That's because, and I feel like what traditionally was a Democrat and what traditionally as a Republican is completely out the window. Both parties are really, really fucked up. But if somebody was to ask, like, what are conservative or what are Republican values, it would be lower taxes and less regulation, whereas Democrats are for higher taxes and more regulation. So, if we were to really dumb things down to that point, I think the market would favor a Trump win. Biden is supposed to be good for probably, like, a lot of people say Biden's going to be good for solar, wind, renewable energies, and also like infrastructure building. So even though Trump may be better for the economy as a whole, and Trump is going to put a focus on stock prices in the stock market, Biden would probably put more into like big projects and infrastructure spending and things like that, which in a roundabout way is good for the economy. Anyways, I think we're pretty far off from actually like being able to get off of oil. So I don't think that's renewable energy stocks are going to skyrocket under Biden, but that's a perception, and sometimes perception is more important than reality. I see a ton of people bringing up weed stocks in Biden as if Biden's going to be the savior for weed stocks. Weed stocks have almost since the beginning been a shitty investment. Most weed stocks are doing terribly. And Biden has not said he's going to legalize marijuana federally. Biden, at best, has said he would decriminalize marijuana. Decriminalizing marijuana does nothing in terms of letting marijuana businesses get into banking. Right now, banking, credit card processing, things like that. Weed businesses are pretty much locked out of it because banks are federally regulated, and because marijuana is illegal federally, they can't really work with banks, or at the very least, it's very difficult to work with banks. Biden's not going to legalize marijuana federally, so nothing's going to change with the banks. And also, dispensaries and weed companies aren't going to be able to buy, sell, or transport marijuana over state lines as long as it only remains in a decriminalized status. A decriminalized status for marijuana federally really doesn't mean very much, anyways, because I know Trump's Attorney General or whatever, Jeff Sessions, early on had kind of cracked down on weed a little bit, or was talking shit about weed a little bit. But for the most part, I mean, it's not like the late 90s, early 2000s when like marijuana dispensaries are being raided by the feds. Like, for the most part, the federal government kind of keeps out of weed businesses, period, and is kind of at the very least willing to respect that states have legalized it. And, okay, we'll let these businesses go about their business. So Biden decriminalizing marijuana does absolutely nothing. That's not even guaranteed to happen. And Kamala Harris actually has a history of being very anti-marijuana and locking people up for weed. So I don't expect weed stocks to surge under her. Ultimately, I think whatever the stock market does in reaction to either a Biden or Trump victory is going to be pretty short-lived. We'll see a spike or a drop initially, and then things will kind of settle back. More than anything, the market hates uncertainty. So whether it's Biden or Trump, once we know what's going on, and that uncertainty over who the president isn't going to drag on for months, I think things should kind of bounce back kind of quickly. One thing that's kind of crazy, the stock market has, a lot of people have been talking about how the stock market is completely disconnected from reality, right? Stocks tanked in March, but pretty much recovered within a matter of weeks, and things have been on a tear, and we're at all-time highs, even while unemployment numbers are fucking terrible. More businesses keep shutting down. COVID is spiking even more. So, I'm not, obviously the Fed has been printing, and it's kind of funny. If you go way back, like even like a year back, I remember telling a buddy of mine who's kind of a newer investor, he was kind of asking me what I was going to do, or if I thought we were in a bubble or there was going to be a crash, and I kind of told him, I said, as long as the Fed keeps printing money, I'm keeping my money in the market. And kind of by funny coincidence, I really didn't pull out, I was hesitant or skeptical about the stock market for a while, like everybody else, like a little bit gun shy, like are things going to come crashing down? Are we going to see a correction? I actually pulled a lot of money out of the market back in January, not really because I saw anything coming. It was more so, like I said, in January, I went down to Florida looking to buy a house. I was going to try to buy a house in cash, so I was trying to liquidate some crypto and some stocks and things like that. And it was just kind of by dumb luck, the timing worked out that I got out of the market in time. I remember back when the market tanked in March, I started plowing money back into the market, into a lot of things that had gotten hit the hardest. Carnival Cruise, Bed Bath & Beyond, Six Flags. And I really thought, I don't think COVID is that big of a deal. At the time, I didn't think COVID was that big of a deal. I kind of realized everything was tanking because we kind of artificially decided to shut down the economy to turn off the spigot. And I figured, as soon as people stop overreacting to this, we can turn it right back on and everything's going to bounce back to normal. Not in my worst night, I was going to say not in my wildest dreams, but there's something to dream about. Not in my worst nightmare did I see COVID dragging on for this long and all of us wearing masks and everything else. But nonetheless, even though things continued getting worse, the market exploded. I probably took profits too quick and pretty much pulled all that money out of the market again. And I've missed out on a lot of gains. And that kind of brings me to the topic of, generally I kind of parrot the same thing that everybody parrots, which is time in the market beats timing the market. You shouldn't really try to time the market. If you want to be a swing trader or a day trader with a little bit of your money, cool. But in general, you shouldn't really try to time the market. And, there's people who've been sitting out of the market since 2014, 2016, waiting on things to crash. And this just kind of reiterated kind of that rule or that lesson. And, it basically comes down to a lot of people pulled their money out, back in November, December, January, whenever. Some people even kind of rode the recovery after March and then pulled their money out. And what we've kind of seen is, you have people pulling their money out of the market, trying to avoid a 10, 15, 20, even 30% pullback, but they've literally missed out on almost that much in gains, trying to avoid the downside. I just got home, so I'm going to try to wrap this up in a couple of minutes. As far as COVID, I actually kind of had my own COVID scare, way back in way back in February. I was almost certain I had COVID. I wasn't able to get tested because it was almost impossible to get tested at that time. And COVID wasn't even really that well known about. I remember I was at a client's office, and I was sitting in a tiny little office with their marketing department and their purchaser. And man, I had a horrible cold, and I'm sitting in this tiny little enclosed office with them, and I'm like hacking up a lung, coughing all over the place. And they were kind of looking at me weird. And I was like, I can leave. We can reschedule this. And they were like, no, it's fine. And what's kind of funny about that's right before COVID kicked off. Think about it today, man. You're with somebody, and you even clear your throat, and everybody around you looking at you like, what the fuck? Get this guy the fuck out of here. This guy's got COVID. And here, like right before that kicked off, I'm in a tiny enclosed office with like 4 other people hacking up a lung, and nobody really thought twice about it. My experience, I was sick as shit for like a whole week, probably like a 3-4 day weekend, literally did nothing but slept. And it probably took me like a good month to recover. I was still coughing, I didn't have all my energy. I didn't have all my wind when it came to exercising and things like that. So I didn't think I was going to die, but it hit me pretty hard. And at the time I didn't, nobody was really talking about COVID. Well, fast forward to maybe 2-3 weeks ago, my girlfriend works for a surgeon, and she winds up getting a call that one of the patients that they had worked on turned out they had tested positive for COVID. So she had been exposed 4 or 5 days earlier, just found out. It was kind of funny. It was a Friday night. A buddy of mine's like, hey, I'm going to come by the house. And I'm like, so-and-so, my girlfriend was exposed to COVID. She just got tested. We don't know till Sunday. I don't know if you want to come by. And he's kind of like me. He's like, I don't really give a shit. He's like, COVID's kind of bullshit, whatever. I'll come by. So he winds up coming by the house, winds up crashing at the house Friday and Saturday, hanging out on Sunday, and then going home. And then Sunday afternoon, my girlfriend gets the call, you're positive for COVID. So I called him up. I'm like, hey, dude, where are you at right now? He's like, oh, I'm just about to go by my parents' house. I'm like, well, my girlfriend's got COVID, so I don't know if you want to go by there. Turned out he didn't get it. And what was kind of funny about this was I all along I've been like poo-pooing COVID. It's not a big deal. And then once I found out my girlfriend had it, then it does kind of hit home a little bit. It's like, oh, and she was like, do you want me to go? She was going to go stay with her girlfriend from work, and just to make sure that I didn't get it or whatever. And I was like, look, I'm pretty sure I already had it. I've been with you 4 or 5 days. If I'm gonna get it, I'm gonna get it. And so she just stayed at the house, and I never wound up getting it. So either I have the strongest immune system ever known to man, or I already have COVID. And I think it's probably pretty safe to say that I already had COVID. She didn't have it bad at all. When I had it, I really did have like trouble breathing. I had a really bad cough, felt like shit. And it lasted a really long time. And like her and her coworkers, all they really had, like, I think all of them had diarrhea. They all had like a mild sore throat, lasted anywhere from like 1 to 3 days. And, then they were pretty much all back in business. But, early on, I'd kind of joked, or I'd kind of said, like, I keep hearing about all these dead bodies in the streets and everybody's getting COVID. And, around me, I'm just not seeing it. Like, nobody I know has COVID. Nobody I know knows somebody who has COVID. Nobody I know knows anybody who knows anybody who knows anybody who knows anybody who has COVID. This is kind of weird. And like now, like, yeah, it is kind of like sweeping. Like almost everybody I know has COVID right now. My girlfriend's coworker who got it wound up giving it to like 7 of her family members. But here's the crazy thing. Out of the 7 family members that she gave COVID to, only one of them had any symptoms whatsoever. So it's like, COVID's really terrible. It's this really horrible thing. But, over half of you guys aren't even going to experience any symptoms. And that's one other thing. I'm kind of off on a crazy long rant here, but that's one of the things about COVID. My girlfriend, like a couple days into it, she wasn't feeling great, but she wasn't feeling horrible. And she's like, I'm really scared. My girlfriend is a 2-time cancer survivor, went through chemo and radiation. So she's one of these people who is at risk. And, even I was a little bit concerned about her. But she was kind of freaking out, and I had to kind of calm her down. And I said, look, if you didn't know that there was this thing called COVID, and if you hadn't been, hearing all these stories from the media about all these couples who died 2 minutes apart holding hands, and all these kids who choked on their own lung fluid, I'm like, if you didn't know that there was a name for this thing, what would you think? And she was like, oh, I think I have a little bit of a sore throat, and I'm kind of shitting a lot. And I was like, exactly, right? And so I feel like all this hype is kind of hyping people up and making people terrified of it. And it's one of the worst things for your immune system and just for your health in general? Stress and cortisol levels. So you get somebody who gets diagnosed with COVID, and then you got them freaking the fuck out because the media makes it seem like everybody's going to die of this thing. I'm way off track here. I want to kind of wrap this video up. Things are starting to lock back down in Europe. Things are starting to lock back down here in Chicago. It'll be interesting to see if the stock market kind of gets back in line with where the real economy is, which is pretty bad. Really, really kind of anxious for tomorrow. I'm kind of curious to see how the election winds up turning out. Curious to see how the stock market reacts to it. I didn't really touch on crypto too much, but it seems like crypto is kind of decoupling from the stock market, where crypto isn't necessarily going to move in line with the S&P 500 or the Dow or whatever else. So there we got like a little bit of a 30-minute long rant. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, so give it a thumbs up. If not, give it a thumbs down. If you enjoyed the video, click that subscribe button, ring the bell, all that good stuff. And if you guys have any thoughts, opinions, comments about anything or everything I discussed in today's video, go ahead and drop it down below. So thanks for tuning in, guys. I'll catch you on the next one.